Imagine arriving in the middle of the Oregon desert and discovering an entire city built by a spiritual movement. Roads, homes, businesses, thousands of devoted followers, private aircraft, armed security, political ambitions, and at the center of it all, a spiritual guru whose followers believed he could transform human consciousness. To some, he was an enlightened teacher. To others, he was the leader of one of the most controversial movements in modern history. His name was Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh, later known as Osho, and for a brief period during the 1980s, his followers attempted something few groups had ever achieved. They built their own city. What followed would become one of the strangest and most unbelievable chapters in American history. This is the story of the Rajneesh movement, the movement that built a city in the desert. The story begins in India. Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh was born in 1931. From an early age, he displayed a strong independent streak and frequently challenged authority. As a young man, he became interested in philosophy, religion, and spirituality. Unlike traditional religious teachers, Rajneesh encouraged questioning established beliefs. His lectures attracted attention because they were provocative. He criticized organized religion. He criticized political systems. He criticized social traditions. Supporters saw him as a revolutionary thinker. Critics viewed him as controversial and dangerous. By the 1960s and 1970s, Rajneesh's popularity had grown significantly. Followers traveled long distances to hear him speak. Many were drawn to his teachings about personal freedom, meditation, and self-discovery. A community gradually formed around him. As the movement expanded, so did its resources. Ashrams were established. Books were published. International followers arrived. What had begun as a spiritual movement was becoming a global organization, and its most ambitious chapter had not yet begun. The Rajneesh movement attracted people from around the world. Unlike many cults, its followers often came from educated backgrounds: doctors, lawyers, business owners, university students, professionals seeking meaning beyond conventional society. Many followers described feeling disconnected from traditional lifestyles. They wanted something different. Rajneesh offered an alternative vision, a life focused on personal growth, meditation, community, and spiritual exploration. His movement also benefited from excellent marketing: books, lectures, recorded talks, international centers. The message spread rapidly. Followers adopted distinctive clothing and often wore malas featuring photographs of Rajneesh. These visual symbols strengthened group identity. For newcomers, the movement felt exciting, modern, transformational. Many believed they had discovered a path toward a better life. As membership increased, leaders within the movement began thinking bigger, much bigger. They no longer wanted a spiritual center. They wanted an entire city. In 1981, the movement purchased a massive ranch in Oregon. The property covered tens of thousands of acres. It was remote, dry, and largely undeveloped. Most people would have seen empty land. The Rajneeshees saw opportunity. Construction began almost immediately. Roads were built. Housing appeared. Agricultural systems were developed. Infrastructure expanded. Within a remarkably short period of time, a functioning community emerged. The settlement became known as Rajneeshpuram. What made the project extraordinary was its scale. This wasn't a commune with a few dozen members. Thousands of followers relocated to Oregon. The city eventually included homes, restaurants, transportation systems, and community facilities. Aircraft flew in and out. Visitors arrived from around the world. To supporters, Rajneeshpuram was proof that their movement could create something remarkable. To critics, it appeared increasingly strange. And tensions with local residents began growing. As Rajneeshpuram expanded, questions emerged regarding leadership and control. Many followers remained deeply devoted to Rajneesh. His speeches influenced daily life. His approval carried enormous weight. Over time, power became concentrated among senior leaders. One of the most influential figures was Ma Anand Sheela. Sheela served as Rajneesh's personal secretary and became one of the most powerful individuals within the organization. She was aggressive, highly ambitious, and fiercely protective of the movement. As conflicts with local communities intensified, the atmosphere became increasingly confrontational. Disputes arose over land use, political influence, voting power, and expansion plans. Residents in nearby towns worried that the movement was becoming too powerful. The Rajneeshees, meanwhile, believed they were being unfairly targeted. The relationship deteriorated rapidly. Each side viewed the other with growing suspicion. What had started as a spiritual experiment was becoming a political battle, and the stakes continued to rise. By the mid-1980s, tensions reached a breaking point. Leaders within the movement sought greater political influence in local elections. As investigations later revealed, some individuals associated with the organization became involved in criminal activities. The most infamous incident involved a food contamination attack carried out in an attempt to influence voter turnout. The event sickened hundreds of people and became one of the most significant bioterror incidents in United States history. Authorities launched investigations. Journalists intensified scrutiny. Former insiders began speaking publicly. Questions multiplied. What was really happening inside Rajneeshpuram? How much did leaders know? Who was responsible? The image of a peaceful spiritual community was rapidly collapsing. The investigations produced devastating consequences. Law enforcement agencies conducted searches. Evidence was gathered. Criminal charges followed. Several prominent leaders left the community. Others were arrested. Internal divisions became impossible to hide. The organization that had appeared so powerful only a few years earlier was beginning to fall apart. Rajneesh himself eventually faced legal challenges related to immigration violations. In 1985, he agreed to leave the United States. Without its central figure, the movement's American experiment rapidly unraveled. Rajneeshpuram declined. Residents departed. Buildings were abandoned or repurposed. The dream of building a permanent spiritual city in Oregon had come to an end. Today, the story of Rajneeshpuram remains one of the most unusual episodes in modern American history. Supporters continue to value many of Rajneesh's teachings on meditation and personal growth. Critics point to the criminal activities, concentration of power, and conflicts that emerged within the movement. The story challenges simple explanations. It contains elements of spirituality, politics, community building, charismatic leadership, and controversy. Most importantly, it demonstrates how quickly idealistic movements can become entangled in power struggles and conflict. The Rajneesh movement built something that few organizations ever achieve: an entire city. Yet the same forces that fueled its rapid rise ultimately contributed to its downfall. For a brief moment in the Oregon desert, a spiritual movement accomplished what seemed impossible. Thousands of followers came together to build roads, homes, businesses, and a functioning city from the ground up. It was one of the most ambitious social experiments of the 20th century. But as power grew, so did conflict. As influence expanded, so did controversy, and eventually, investigations exposed actions that would bring the project crashing down. The city disappeared. The movement changed. But the story remains. A reminder that even the most ambitious visions can unravel when power, loyalty, and leadership collide. This has been another case file from Villain Files.